Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is February 9th, YC 125, and this is the Eve Universe Show! Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and today I want to talk about the New Eden news for yesterday, which was February 8th, YC 125. I want to do it a little bit differently today than previous days. What we're going to do is I'm going to read each section, and then we'll talk a little bit about each section in between. That way we can kind of maybe put some context into each news item. As we get closer and closer to the next faction campaign, I feel like that's going to be important. So, let us begin. Report on research project into Caldari Shipcaster technology leaks from Concord Edencom Task Force. Uli Genesis. A secret report into a Caldari Shipcaster technology research project has leaked from a joint task force, once again throwing the embattled institutions of Concord and Edencom into controversy and disarray. Authored by a group made up of members of Concord's AG-12 office and Edencom's Stellar Monitoring Directorate, the report outlines the efforts to ascertain the technological developments pursued by the Caldari state since the discovery of Edencom and Triglavian facilities in Othanoon. The report's most startling findings claim that, quote, the Caldari state technologists have made major progress towards utilizing a key Triglavian technology that has the capability of unlimited range deployment of assets with potentially pinpoint precision. While the Caldari program does not appear to have overcome the enormous spoiling factors inherent in planetary gravity wells, and seems unlikely to be able to do so for some time, we assess their progress as having mastered the theory sufficiently that relatively large assets such as spaceships might be projected to locations over interstellar distances without regard for sinusoidal jammers and other counter-jump defenses. The Caldari have designated the element of this program as Interstellar Shipcaster. The extensive report also describes the history of a secret Edencom facility in orbit of Othanoon 5, and the efforts in the organization to penetrate Triglavian facilities on the surface of that planet and recover technology. A brief precis of events indicate Edencom efforts at monitoring and infiltration were met with an extreme response from Triglavian forces, but also describe an energetic orbital event apparently triggered by Edencom counterattacks that disrupted both sides and led to a mutual retreat by Edencom and Triglavian forces. The report also alleges that Caldari forces attracted by reports of the conflict and disruptive phenomena took advantage of the situation to, quote, seize Edencom property and data, end quote, in an act that led directly to the Surthud campaign and the Caldari state's successful campaign to recover Triglavian relay data. Notably, the report indicates that AG-12, formerly the SCC's Interstellar Technology Sharing Audit and Inspection Office, used agents of the DED Warranted Regulation of Interstellar Technology Sharing, RITS, unit to, quote, facilitate acquisitions of relevant Caldari state data and ascertain progress on this sanctioned field of technology. The Caldari state's chief executive panel has reacted with fury over the revelations that RITS agents were, quote, spying on vital state research programs under the guise of Edencom cooperation protocols, end quote, and has formally lodged a protest with Concord Assembly. The CEP has also issued a directive to the Caldari Business Tribunal authorizing seizure of all identifiable RITS assets within the Caldari state, quote, by any and all state registered corporations as agents of the chief executive panel, end quote. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this first one. What is going on here? Well, several months ago, a Edencom facility in the system of Othanoon, which was a Triglavian controlled minor victory, started decloaking around the planet Othanoon 5, which is a storm planet. Now, we've had recent reports up until that point that there was Triglavian activity both on the storm planets of Othanoon 5 as well as the larger Surthuld constellation, that the Triglavians have particularly occupied this system, or at least it had been detected. And the decloaking Edencom facility triggered a conflict to try to secure the area, which the Caldari won, because at the time the Caldari had much more superior forces and control of the area. So they solidified control, and it was Caldari forces that were able to enter into Othanoon, the Othanoon facility, and recover the data therein, where they found the information about a Triglavian stronghold on the surface of Othanoon 5. They show an Edencom probe going down there and then getting shot down by an automated drone on Othanoon 5. This triggers a project by both teams to build stargates to Othanoon. The Gallentes was originating from a Mignon. The Caldari was originating from the Edencom fortress of Samanuni, the home system of the now CEP chairman Akimaka Saraki. As part of that faction campaign, the Caldari state militiamen were able to lock out the Gallente from both tasks of constructing the gate and doing the Triglavian research data, while at the same time succeeding in their objectives. So now there is a new Stargate from Othanoon to Samanuni, and clearly the Caldari state are able to move forward with this Shipcaster technology thanks to the successful efforts of the Caldari state during that campaign. So, all things to keep in mind as we get closer to the next campaign. What is a Shipcaster technology? So the thing is that Triglavians have had a history of being able to teleport things around. Not only do they have the ability to create the conduits that they use as stargates in order to get from one place to another, not only do they seem to have a bit of a mastery of the filament technology that we don't necessarily have, and the ability to manipulate space-time in order to get the effects that they want. There is an instance back in Esmis 3, when the planet of Esmis 3 had a colony, Lost Hope, I think it was, or something, that was basically everybody was removed from that colony, all biological matter all matter on a molecular level, and they all mysteriously were discovered on the system of Gonard 2, or the planet of Gonard 2, a little while later, showing that Triglavians have transportation technology. And of course, the last world news kind of hinted at the fact that they could have even personnel transport. Now, the Caldari have not gotten that far, but perhaps, the grosser the thing, the bigger the thing, the less precision that is required. And so they have effectively began mastering a device that seems to be almost like a filament on demand, right? This could be potentially be some sort of structure that could be used as like a catapult in order to give a one-way jump to a location. Now, the fact that it does not require, or the fact that it can get around Sanojammers is pretty remarkable. It will be interesting to see where this goes. This could very well easily be something as simple as a new way for Caldari people, or this is a new facility that lets people to get to either to Pochvin or wormhole space, or something like that, right? It's hard to say. It's also worth noting that, like, this plus what we also see in the Transmuters actually implies that there are actually multiple technologies that these events are coming out with. I've speculated in the past that what we're getting is a transmuter, and we'll talk more about that later. But this Shipcaster seems like even yet another new function that, under certain conditions, players might be able to utilize, either in structure form or something else. We'll have to see as it goes on, but it's very possible that we will see some of this as part of the new faction campaign that should be starting any time now. All right, next. Amar Empire construction site at Ohide Star reported to be stellar transmuter. Ohide devoid. A new Amar stellar transmuter is under construction at a site around a blue AO class star at the Ohide system, according to reports from the system. With Ohide located close to Amar Mimitar militia war zone and the newly declared HQ of, quote, Combined Fleet Group Damius, end quote, it appears that the Amar Empire is determined to press ahead with its efforts to exploit and militarize the stellar transmuter technology tested by them in Egmar, Vard, and catastrophically in Turner. Captain Marshal Zerdan Sirkosh has reportedly received full backing to pursue stellar transmuter and ancillary technologies from Empress Katis I, despite reports of misgivings among the ranks of the royal heirs' families. Since the Triglavian invasions and the acquisition of stellar transmuter technology by Amar exploitation of the captured Arshat transmuter, imperial policy has shifted dramatically towards increasing militancy and a steady ratcheting of expansionist rhetoric. Once thought to be the epitome of the strategy of divine patience, Empress Katis has shifted gears from a mercantile, diplomacy-oriented leader to preside over an Amar empire that has made huge strides to rebuild its fleets, recruit new legions, and rearm a war machine aimed at accelerating a new reclaiming. Made fully responsible for defense of their own vast territories, those royal heirs less inclined to militancy have nevertheless seen their power leveraged to revitalize a ministry of war that is driving the new Imperial mandate for a military capable of holding down and expanding the largest empire in New Eden. The Minmatar Republic greeted the news of the Amarr project in Ohide in surprisingly muted fashion. Ambassador Kaiten Yun declaring the construction predictable and, to be sure, predicted by us long since. There are persistent rumors at the great caravanserai on Matar that the Minmatar have decided to, quote, fight fire with fire, end quote, and embark on their own stellar transmuter project. The Gallente Federation's Office of the President issued a release in which Celis Agard's administration, quote, deplores the reckless move to further experiment with technologies proven to have devastating consequences for all of New Eden, end quote. For their part, the Caldari state has remained silent on the matter, though sources high in the several Big 8 megacorporations are said to view the rise of expansionist thinking in the Empire with great concern. All right, so what's happening here? Well, obviously, like I said, the Amarr built 3 stellar transmuters during the last faction campaign, and the Amarr and the Minmatar both completed their research projects. Now, of the 3 stellar transmuters, which were all within the militia war zone, 2 of them were recaptured by the Minmatar. The Minmatar were able to successfully shut down their stargates, but upon the 2 being captured, the third, the one in Turner, began to destabilize until there was a massive kernel mass injection, this big burst that we all got to experience that took everybody's hull down to 20%, destroyed a lot of structures, and it decimated the planet of Turner 1 as well as the station around it. That event was caused due to that experimentation. However, the Amarr have announced that that was considered to be a success, so they are moving forward with their experiment. Now, what's interesting about this one is that it is in high sec, which means without something bizarre happening, unlike the last time, it'll be much more difficult for players to actually disrupt the attempts for this transmuter to be turned on, right? We can't capture the system from the Amarr. However, it does note here that it is close to the war zone, but it was also noted actually on the Beaver show, I think is what they now call it, the Sorry in Advance show. They were talking about this, and they mentioned that this also happens to be a pretty major link on the route between Jita and Amarr, now that Niarj is gone. So if this system was to go catastrophically wrong, it could further destroy and perhaps even forever break off a pure high-sec to high-sec link between Jita and Amarr, which would be pretty wild. So there's plenty of things now in play that could very well be part of the faction campaign here. This also, what's important to note is that Conid and Lidai were caught doing research around AO stars in Aridia. So if you consider that this star, and then Aridia was one, there could be a third transmuter that they no longer want they want to keep all 3 of them within secured locations now. So this could sync up with a third transmuter where they could try to link these disparate areas together, which would be pretty incredible feat of engineering and incredibly useful to the Amarr, as it would stitch together their empire, their otherwise extremely vast empire, with a couple of quick jumps. The fact that the Minmatar are continuing their own research of this as well is kind of troubling. So you got to think about it this way. The Minmatar are the only other people that know the data or have the data from the transmuters. They both captured the transmuters and also got the data from the transmuters. They successfully completed their research project. The fact that the Minmatar are moving forward with it means that they know what's going on and they want it too. So regardless of how dangerous this is, regardless of how disruptive it is, the Minmatar have opted to pursue this technology as well, rather than expose it to the wider cluster or, community, the galactic community. So this is going to be interesting to keep an eye on as well. Next. Republic further fortifies Ammo to establish unified warzone headquarters. Ammo Metropolis. Minmatar Republic forces have further fortified the Ammo system as Hetman General Kenneth Filmer, Unified Territorial Liberation Command, expands its headquarters and role in administration of operations to push back Amarr Empire occupation of the Republic's territory in the militia war zone. General Filmer issued orders on behalf of the Tribal Council in Samatar Malatu Shakur that underline the importance of an ongoing fortification of gates and the construction of additional Republic fleet station in the system. These orders have gave roles to the Republic's security services and Republic Justice Departments in carrying out special tasks and organizing liberation flights, respectively. The prospect of competing security agencies operating even further into the sphere of the war zone and nearby high security systems has increased concerns of the Republic becoming a police state, contrary to the ideals of the Tribal Republic. Fears of a creeping militarist authoritarianism within the Republic have also been stoked by the authorization. Is it authorization? Authorization. Oh my god. By the authorization of search and disdain. Jesus fucking Christ. Fears of creeping militarist authoritarianism in the Republic have also been stoked by the authorization of search and detain police powers for the Regional Territorial Guards formation of the Republic, together with the Tribal Council's designation of crimes against the Mimitar people as under the jurisdiction of a military tribunal system controlled by the Republic Command and Fleet. The Tribal Council was highly split on these latest authorizations and orders, with the Chief Sebestior, Thucker, and Vriokior tribes dissenting from the majority made up from the Brutor, Krusel, Nefenter, and Starkmanir tribes. Debate is reported to have been heated, but many of the details, possibly including authorization of rumored Mimitar exploitation of stellar transmuter technology, remain highly classified. Even so, Chief Akasa Midgular of the Sebester tribe has gone as far as to comment harshly on the manner by which a majority for the new policies was achieved. Shakur knew he couldn't rely on the Thucker tribe for measures as far-reaching and injurious of a clan of tribal sovereignty as these, so he bribed the Starkmanir and threatened the Nefentar. We are in a war with the Amar for our freedom, but Shakur risks something even worse with his relentless drive to control the Republic at every level. All right, so this is an interesting one. First of all, lots of words. What's going on here? What I find most interesting about this one is how much it is focusing on Shakur. In the news, in the world news from last week, the last world news, one of the things that, you know, I adore Serdan Serkosh. She's probably one of my favorite dudes, just because everything that he says is just delicious, right? Best propaganda. But one of the things he mentions is the failure of Shakurite policies. Now, I haven't seen too many depictions of Shakur as being like a negative leader or having his leadership overly questioned much since he took power in Empyrean Age. But if you think about it, Empyrean Age really was predicated upon Shakur calling out Midgular and for being too weak and taking over the Mimitar as Sanmatar. So there's this really weird echo in this story where now Midgular, I assume daughter of Karen Midgular, is calling out Shakur for his policies and for not doing enough, and basically focusing on attempting to consolidate power over the Republic versus fighting Amar, which makes a lot of sense because, like, cohesion within the Republic has always been one of the hardest things. Like, them being, like, an actual Republic is something that's been strained on multiple occasions. And in fact, the failure to hold it all together was one of the ways that Shakur was able to wrestle power from Midgular. So, to that end, it feels like they are, as they've done quite a bit, kind of setting up the same beats, or we're seeing echoes from those days of, like, the Empyrean Age, Templar 1, etc. She wants to talk to the management, exactly. I also find it interesting that, like, basically, she's not just calling him out blankly, because it was the chief of the Sebester tribe that did it. So, like, after... oh, that was her dissenting opinion. Yes, okay, never mind. Yeah, she was part of the dissenting group, right. Starkmanir, of course the Starkmanir and the Nefentir are going to side with him, because, like, they were the tribes from the Empyrean Age as well, right? Brutor is his tribe. Krasul. Sure. Either way. Federal militarization of Intaki raises security status and blocks capsular structures. Intaki, placid. Gallente Federation authorities have taken further steps to militarize the Intaki system while raising its security status and blocking the anchoring of new capsular structures. A federal directive declaring that Intaki and neighboring systems are now part of a, quote, Virat Special Military District, end quote, was issued on behalf of President Selis Agard by the Federal Military Commission by Vice Admiral Forina Revelli, commander of the Federation's Combined Special Task Force 15. The steps taken by presidential and FedMilcom's orders have been consented to by the Intaki Assembly and ratified by the Federal Senate, legally activating emergency clauses in the treaties and articles of federation under which the Intaki system is a member of the Gallente Federation. The federal administration registered an increase in system security rating from 0.3 with Concord. At the same time, it entered into a formal exception to the ULI Convention, placing a block on the construction of new capsular structures in the Intaki system. President Selis Agard's administration continues to maintain that it is acting to, quote, fully secure the Intaki system from any future threats of Kandari occupation, while providing for the broader prosecution of efforts. I don't feel like that's the correct word. Providing for the broader prosecution of efforts to fully liberate Gallente systems within the militia war zone. End quote. Critics of the increasing militarization of Intaki by Federation forces alleged the measures to be, as Senator Suvio Belleron of the Intaki put it, quote, a flagrant and ongoing breach of essential sovereignty of the Intaki people as provided for by the federal constitution and all principles of the Federation, end quote. Supporters of President Agard point to the consent of the Intaki Assembly, with Senator Farron Shu dismissing Senator Belleron's position as amounting to, quote, Intaki for the Intaki and federalism for everyone else. As usual, Belleron is a central federalist cobbler for whom the shoe pinches when he has to wear it. Citing reports that a dissenting Intaki Assembly members have been harassed, arrested, or otherwise suppressed by the Federation forces, Belleron hit back, quote, Senator Shu has made a career out of supporting authoritarianism in all of its guises, whether it be his Sengdo paymasters back home, or the federal military-industrial money teat he openly suckles while Agard looks on fondly. While federal senators and other politicians trade verbal blows over this controversial policy over Intaki, many citizens continue to protest and counter-protest over the issue. A large anti-militarization rally on Noika, Intaki Prime, was broken up by federal Marines after a number of Federation offices were allegedly vandalized by protesters. Intaki autonomous activists have alleged agents provocateurs infiltrated the rally, but have also been forced to disavow the Free Intaki Army, a militant group outright calling for full independence that has claimed responsibility for a number of attacks on federal military and intelligence officials. And that is it. So, for this one, there's a lot of interesting things here. First of all, Intaki, the system of Intaki originally did have it in their charter that they would be remaining pretty much independent of the Federation, or at least more independent than a lot of other groups. So that's why there's this important thing about the execution of the special clause within the treaties and articles of Federation. Effectively, they pulled the nuclear option, as it were, in order to make this happen. Now, the system goes from 0.2 to 0.3. It started out with 0.1. Now it goes from 0.1 to 0.2. It's been pretty slow. So what do I think is going to happen here? Here's my prediction. Ready? I think that the next world event, the next, faction campaign, is going to, at least in part, be over the fate of Intaki. I think that what we have is the two constellations that were taken out of the war zone as part of Intaki will be put back into the war zone. They will be contestable. They may actually start as Gallente's held systems to give the Gallente an advantage in those systems. But the idea being that if the Gallente can secure the area to a certain extent, then Intaki successfully becomes a 0.5 system. They get a cool HQ, etc., etc. If they fail to do so, then Intaki fails to become, continue to ratchet up, and they have to do something else. I think it would be an interesting way to do things, and if the next faction campaign is designed to correspond with the new direct enlistment program where people can just join faction warfare and duplexes, this would be a really obvious thing for them to go and do, is like, oh, hey, look, there's these two constellations in Intaki, or in the Gallente Caldari war zone, that we're focusing on, and 1 constellation in nullsec as part of this fight. Whereas on the Amarr side, it's tougher to know what exactly they're going to be targeting as like a goal. Yeah, I think that they meant execution instead of prosecution. All right, well, that's it for your news. Your New Eden news for this February 8th, YC 125. This has been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and until next time, I'll see you in space.